This video clip is to explain the ACT concept of acceptance and why adopting an acceptance kind of mindset can be incredibly useful when you're dealing with high anxiety states and feelings of panic. Now, I know some of you who may be currently suffering from panic attacks. This may be the last thing you want to hear someone saying to try to accept the feelings. And I can totally understand that. When I had my panic attacks, if I'd gone to a coach or a therapist and they'd said to me, try to accept it, I would have walked out the door. It's only because of the experiences I've had, as I've explained in the other videos, that I really do see the value of acceptance towards high anxiety and panic. It really makes a huge difference. Now, there are two main reasons why ACT suggests we adopt this acceptance kind of mind frame. And acceptance in ACT really means we are willing to make space for the feelings, to open up to the feelings, to allow them just to be there, even though we don't like them or we don't want them. So we can have thoughts that we don't like them, that we don't want them, but we can also, even though we have those thoughts, we can still allow the feelings to be there without resisting them or fighting them. Because the problem with resistance and fighting is that it doesn't really work. It's a bit like putting petrol onto a fire to try and put the fire out. It doesn't really work. Hopefully, if you've watched the video on understanding the stress mechanism and the biology of stress, you can perhaps get an inkling as to why the internal resistance and the fighting and the struggle to try to get rid of the panic is actually a big part of the reason why the panic escalates and we feel more and more panicky each day. ACT talks about this concept of clean anxiety and dirty anxiety. So clean anxiety is the anxiety that comes from just natural living. So if we go to work and there's an interview, or we're in social surroundings and we're meeting new people, then there's a natural kind of anxiety that arises through that. And that's partly related to our history and through our genetics, etc. Now, the clean anxiety that comes with just living our lives is something that we need to create a kind of willingness to accept. Because if we don't, we get what's called dirty anxiety, which is like an extra layer of anxiety or layers of anxiety over and above the original level of anxiety. So when we struggle inside with feelings of anxiety, we start to add more adrenaline, we get more tensed up, we feel more drained, more exhausted, on top of the energy draining effects and the tension and the anxiety that was created just through interactions with people or being in a certain situation. It's the added anxiety that we have control over how we are responding to the anxiety that's appearing in the first place. The alternative approach, I suppose, is to, rather than fight the feelings, we can try to avoid the feelings. So for example, if our anxiety gets triggered when we're in a social environment, we may start to avoid going to parties, going to the pub, or meeting people socially, just because it tends to trigger certain levels of anxiety within us, which we find difficult to be with. Now, if we do that, we create what ACT calls the pain of absence. So our life becomes narrower and narrower. We may be spending more and more time at home, maybe watching the TV or listening to the radio, and less time going out and having a life. And this causes its own pain, its own suffering. So just because we haven't the willingness to experience the anxiety that comes with just natural living, we end up with either fighting with it, in which case we get another level of suffering that comes with the fighting with the feelings, or we withdraw from life and we suffer a different kind of pain, a different kind of suffering that comes with not living our lives. So, what is the answer? Well, instead of fighting the feelings, instead of fleeing from the feelings, Hack proposes that there is a third way. Why not try facing and feeling the feeling? Now, I know when you first hear that, you may sort of reel back in shock and horror to actually feel the panic and go into it. And again, I totally understand that feeling, because for about 6 months, when I had my panic attacks, that was the last thing I wanted to do, was to actually feel the panic. But the surprising thing is that when we actually give ourselves permission to actually feel what we are actually feeling, even though it might feel a bit unpleasant, if we do it in the right kind of way, in the right kind of mindful space, the feelings are nowhere near as bad as the mind makes it out to be. This is what really surprised me when I finally just let go and just sat with the feelings of panic. In a context of struggle, in a context of lack of mindfulness, in a context where we are really fused with thoughts of how terrible having a panic attack is, in this context, then the monster feels incredibly huge, incredibly threatening. However, if we really learn to drop the struggle rope, stop resisting the feelings and really open up inside to them, and at the same time be really mindful, be aware of what's around us, what we can see, what we can hear, what we can feel in terms of our body sensations, of our feet on the ground. If we can connect with this kind of mindful space and we drop the struggle, then being with panic is a completely different ballgame. So the exercises that you'll be seeing in the other videos in the series, the accepting emotions exercise, the leaves on the stream exercise, the mindfulness exercises, if you put all these together, when you become skilled and you can sit with the panic in an accepting way without struggling with it, if you can be really mindful of the panic attack, if you can diffuse from the thoughts that are occurring in your mind about how horrible this thing is, and just notice them as thoughts. When all these skills come together, then being with a panic attack is a completely different experience to being with a panic attack in a context of struggle, in a context of fusion, in a context where you're completely lost in the thoughts about the panic attack and you've got no sense of mindfulness. Now this may just be words to you, but I hope that by actively practicing these exercises on a regular basis, you may start to see a difference as to how you relate to your panic attacks or high anxiety in the weeks and the months to come. Acceptance is not something that develops instantly. It's very hard to develop this quality of just letting go straight away. So you may have to do it in small steps. So you may only be able to open up to your feelings maybe just for a minute or two. And that's fine. That's a good start. If you can build on this day by day, week by week, so that you get to a point where you can just be with the whole panic attack from start to finish, and you see that it actually is like a wave. It'll reach a peak and then it'll just fade away all by itself without you having to do anything. And that's a very liberating experience. And hopefully you'll start to notice that because you're not fighting and you're not struggling with the panic attack, your energy level will go up. And you can start to use this energy to create a life that you really want. And as your willingness to stay with uncomfortable feelings grows through this process, you'll get the added advantage that you'll be able to move into new areas of your life which before you were scared of going into. So maybe you would actually go for a job interview, you would actually get on a bus if before you were scared of getting on a bus, or get on a plane and travel, because now your relationship to the anxiety is different. You know how to hold the anxiety in a new context. These things are definitely possible. I've experienced them for myself, and clients that I've coached have also told me that they are experiencing these things right now. But it does only come with initially a belief that this is a better way of relating to our feelings, to open up to them instead of fighting with them, instead of avoiding them. And then to practice the acceptance exercises, the diffusion exercises, and the mindfulness exercises on a regular basis. So you can spend 10 minutes maybe in the morning doing some acceptance exercises. Maybe in the afternoon do 10 minutes, 15 minutes of a diffusion exercise, diffusing from lots of judgmental or self-critical thoughts. And maybe in the evening, to wind down, maybe do 10-15 minutes of a nice mindfulness exercise, maybe a body scan. But if you do this on a regular basis, maybe for 2 or 3 months, then I'll be surprised if you don't notice a difference in your relationship to your anxiety and your panic. Hopefully your willingness will have grown, and you can see that you can now live your life even though you're feeling panicky, even though you're feeling anxious. So I hope you found this video useful, and if you've got any comments, please get in touch. Thank you.